Hey devs, this video is about Git. Now Git is used for source control. It's an open source distributed version control system to track changes in your software development projects. You can use it as a single person, but it really shines when you're using it with multiple people. Now it was created by that guy who created Linux, Linus Torvalds. He needed some source control for his Linux kernel development, and he wasn't satisfied with any source control out there, so he wrote his own. So I'm going to show you how to install Git, and then we're going to look at other source control you might consider, and then look at web-based remote repositories like GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, and then look at local Git servers, and then compare command line to graphic user interface. Now the command line is where you get all the power. It has all the functionality, but by learning a GUI, graphic user interface, you can do some functionality faster. It's a click of a button rather than just typing a command. So here's how you install Git. It's actually one of the more complicated setups that you have to do. Link in the description. So you go to this web page and you've got various downloads. I'm on Windows 10, so I would click 64-bit Git for Windows. I'm going to quickly go through the setup of Git just to cover some of the settings. Now you should definitely try to understand what all these different options are. If you have a team, try to come to some agreement. I mean, some things you can vary on, personal preferences, but you can control which components get installed. I'm just going to go with the default here. Now, I like to have Visual Studio as my default Git editor. There's a bunch of other options here you can choose from. I mean, this is personal choice. But there are some things that would be related to a team. Adjusting the name of the initial branch. For example, your team might choose master or default or whatever. I'm going to go with master. Main is the default. Now I'm going with Git version 2.29.2.3. So I know these options can be different for you in the future. Adjusting your path. I go with the recommended, but you should definitely research all these different options. And here's where, if you're on a team, you might go with the second option, Windows Secure Channel Library. If your team is on Windows and you have to use a Windows certificate stores. I don't quite know what that is, tell you the truth, but I'm going to go with the default. Now, here's something. If you're on Windows, you have control line feed as your end of line. If you're on Mac, which uses Unix, or use Linux, which is Unix style, use line feed endings. So you select whichever. You can also just go with whatever the file that you're downloading has. But if you have, let's say, just line feeds and you're on Windows, it'll convert that to control line feeds for you. So that's convenient for me. So I'm going to go with that. And the terminal emulator that you use, there's a min-tty you can go with. You should research that. Maybe look up some videos and see. I like the default console window, so I'm just going to stick with the default for Windows. And when you do a git pull, you can do a fast forward or merge or a rebase or an only ever fast forward. So select which default. Again, this would be a good thing to decide if you have a team, but I'm going to go with the default. And credential helper, again, do your research on this. See, I've got a new option here, and as newer versions comes out, these options are all going to change. So I'm just going to go with this default, but you should definitely research this. Now, if it says deprecated, I would personally avoid anything deprecated. I tend to like stuff, if it's newer, it tends to be better. Enable file system caching. This is just to improve performance, so you can read up on that. And there's probably going to be, in the future, even more options here. So now we get down to, they always have this experimental support. You can decide whether you want the cutting, bleeding edge, new features. I'm going to skip that and then go for the install. Even though this is a video on Git, I want to cover 15 other version control software very quickly, starting with Git. And this link will be in the description, and this covers the features, pros, and cons. Now, Git is good for if you're working on a team of people, and some of these are not good for teams. So if you just need source control for yourself, you might consider some of these other versions, because it simplifies the process of source control for an individual. So you have CVS, which I've used, SVN I've also used, Mercurial, Monotone, Bazaar, TFS I've used, VSTS, Perforce Helix Core, IBM Rational Clearcase, Revision Control System, Visual Source Safe. Now this one, you can see the cons, lacks many important features of multi-user environments. I've used this. It's great when it's just you. Has a fairly easy to use interface. So that's what I'm saying. You may consider some of these simpler if it's just you. Number 13, CA Harvest Software Change Manager. It's quite a long name. PVCS and Darks. So when learning Git, I think you should start with learning the command line, but at some point you'll want to learn a GUI client. And it just makes some things easier because it's visual and click of a button instead of typing a command. So let's take a look at the GUI clients, and these links will also be in the description. So you have source tree. I'm going to quickly go through these: Tortoise Git, GitKraken, Smart Git, GitUp, Git G, and you should download some of these and try them out. Git Cola, I've definitely tried some of these and have not liked some of these. Giggle, Ori's, Working Copy, Gmaster, Git Ahead, Git Drive, Git Blade, Repo Z, and some of these are very different in terms of their functionality and what they actually do. Sublime Merge, Snail Git, Git Fox, Nitro Git, VeshD, Polygit. Now, I'll also have a link in the description for all platforms, best Git GUI clients of 2020. And it lists gGit, GitG, GitForce for Linux, and for Windows it recommends SourceTree, GitHub, and Tortoise Git, and for Mac, GitUp, Gitbox, GitXDev, and cross-platform Git clients, GitKraken, Smart Git, Git Cola, and Ori's. I've been using GitKraken. I like a lot, and we'll actually review that later. So you've decided to use Git. Now you can go with GitHub, which is one of the most popular, but there's many alternatives to remote repositories, web-based interfaces. So here's a web page. I'll have the link in the description. 13 best GitHub alternatives in 2020. Already aging out, right? Because you're probably watching this in 2021, 2022, who knows. All right, so Bitbucket I've used, and I feel like it had about the same functionality as GitHub, so it was an excellent alternative. There is SourceForge, Gogs, Gitbucket, AWS Code Commit, Beanstalk, Fabricator, Gitea, Allura. I'm covering these quickly. You can check the link in the description to go over these more closely. Roadcode, CodeGiant, Cloud Source Repositories, and Track. So got lots of options. So take a look at what your options are. Some are going to cost money. Some are going to have features that you want or don't want. So figure out what you need and go with that. You don't have to use one of those remote repositories like GitHub or Bitbucket. You can install Git on a local server and use it locally, and I have done that at a company. Here's a link I'll provide in the description. So to learn Git Command Line quickly, what you should do is just learn the basics, and I'll have this link in the description. It covers 20 of the most common Git commands like git config, git init, git push, git merge, and so on. And it has some code samples below. You'll also want to find yourself a nice Git cheat sheet, and I'll have this link in the description as well. Now, when you want to go deeper, you would go to the Git website, and let's say I want to look up some Git pull options, and you can see that I'm going to scroll quickly. There's just a lot to it, and so you definitely need to take your own notes if you have some of these options that you tend to use a lot. So with Git Command Line, you can use any command line. Let's go over some. So on Windows 10, the default command prompt is one you can use. You could also go with the PowerShell, and you could install Git Bash. It's another one. Or you can use the terminal inside Visual Studio Code. And you would just say terminal, new terminal, and that actually uses the PowerShell. So understanding the GitHub Flow, this is a nice interactive page, and I'll have the link in the description. So this would represent the develop branch, and you'd create a new feature branch, which you would then commit to, and then you would open up a pull request for discussing and reviewing your code, and then you would deploy that for final testing before the final merge back into the develop branch. So I'm going to create a remote repository on GitHub. I just wanted to show you this cool web page, and I thought this was some kind of animation, but I realized that if I drag on it, it's interactive, and if you hover over these lines, it'll stop rotating, and you can see merges happening within the past 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, 8 hours. This, for example, somebody in California City did a merge in Germany. So it just emphasizes the remoteness of it. Okay, I'm going to sign in. And I'm going to create my repo. I just wanted to show you how to delete a repository. These are my remote repositories. And so to delete a repository, what you do is you go to settings and scroll to the bottom, and you have the danger zone. And the very last one is delete this repository. So I'm going to click that, and then it asks you to type in the name of it. And then it's permanently deleted. So let's create a brand new one, and I'm going to call it my repo again. Description, something descriptive, my repo. You can have public or private. And I am going to add a README, which will display when you log in. You'll see that content in GitHub, and a license file. I'm going to pick MIT. You should read about the different license and pick the correct one for you. And I'm going to add a file called .gitignore. And you select which, they have these pre-made ones. I'm going to do C++, for example. And it specifies which files that Git will not commit when you do like a git add dot, which is add everything. It'll ignore these files. You will not be able to commit the files in your git ignore. So let's go to git ignore and take a look. And remember, this is for C++. And so anything with a .d extension, .exe, these are executables, compiled static libraries, So you may not want to add these binary files, just your code, just your source code, OBJ files and so on. Now the license file, I selected the MIT license, and it's very short and quick, and it populates it with your name and the copyright year. And like I said, the README file is what appears right here when you log in and look at your repo, and you can populate that with what you want. So let's do some command line Git. First thing I want to do is clone my remote repository with Git Clone and then the URL to the repository. Creates a subfolder, and you can see that I have the 3 files. If I type Git Branch, it'll show you that I'm on the main branch. Next, I want to create a develop branch where I'll do my development. I could do it on the command line, but I'm going to show you how to do it on GitHub. So on GitHub, you click on your drop-down menu for your branches, and you can see you can create a new branch. So I'll type develop, hit enter. Now we're on the develop branch. Now from the command line, if I do git branch, you can see I only have the main branch down here. But if I type git branch -- remotes, we can see what the remote branches are. So to check out the develop branch, I'll type git checkout develop. And now git branch shows me that I'm on the develop branch. Next, I want to create a feature branch where I'm going to actually implement my feature and later merge it back into the develop branch. So I'll do git checkout -b and then the name of my feature branch. You come up with a naming convention, for example, US for user story, followed by the user story number. So your team should come up with naming conventions for branches. So you can see that I'm now on the feature branch. So now I'll create a new file. And you can see I've got 4 files now. If I type git status, you can see that it's untracked. In order to add that to the repository, I would type git add default.htm. I could also use some wild characters, or I can just specify dot to add all of the current untracked files. Now if we do a git status, you can see it is staged for commit. In order to commit it, I'll do git commit, and now it opens up Visual Studio because that's what I specified as my editor for commit when I installed. So I'll put in initial commit, but you should put in some more meaningful message. Now if I type git status, there's nothing left to commit, and then I just do a git push in order to push it up to my remote repository. You have to set the remote as upstream, and it gives you the command to do that. So simply copy paste and run the command. Then do your git push. Now if you come up to the repository, you can see the push, and I'm going to click compare and pull request. And this is my first commit. I'm going to create a pull request. Now I'm going to specify merge this into develop. So this is my feature branch, and I want to do a pull request on the develop branch. Be sure to check that so you don't accidentally merge into the master or main branch. Same thing, different name. You can name your master or main branch whatever you want. So here is where people might look at your code changes and then leave you comments and finally approve it. And then you could do your, you can merge your pull request. So I'll do that now. All right, it's done. So if we return to the command prompt, type Git Branch. You can see I'm in the feature branch. I'm going to go back to my develop branch, Git Branch, and you can see I'm in my develop branch now. When I get a directory listing, I see that the file default.htm is not there. Let's go back to feature US 10101. You can see that the file default.htm is there. So I'll go back to my develop branch and I'll do a git pull. And you can see I now have default.htm. I can do a git log to see my commits. Next, I'm going to show you how to use GitKraken. And I deleted my repo off of GitHub, and I'm going to create it again with GitKraken. So I'm going to click on GitHub, start a hosted repo on GitHub, and I'm going to select my username. Now I am logged in. Make sure you're logged in to GitHub. And I'm going to specify the name of my repo, make it public, and I'm going to clone after init. So it's going to create the remote repository, and then it's going to clone it locally. I'm going to tell it where to clone it, and it's going to be cloned in that folder. And I'm going to call the default branch main because that's let me just change it to master this time because I'm starting over. And again, we can pick a template and a license just like we did on GitHub. Now LFS is for large file system, and that's if you have large binary files. I'm just going to leave that unchecked. So now I've got my remote repository, and you can click on these files to view their content. So the next thing I want to do is initialize something called Git Flow. I'm going to come over to my settings, preferences, then click on Git Flow, and you can specify the main branch master, the develop branch develop, and the feature branch, release branch, hotfix branch. These are the prefixes for those branches, and I'm going to initialize Git Flow, and it's been initialized. So now that we've initialized Git Flow, you can see there's now a develop branch. And if I double click, you see it checks out that branch. Let's go to the command prompt and let's take a look. So we've created a my repo folder, and I've got the same files from before. And if I do a git branch, you can see I'm on the develop branch. So the way Git Flow works is you come over here, hover over Git Flow. Now that you've initialized it, this will appear. And when you click, you will get this side menu, and you can specify a feature branch, a release branch, hotfix branch. So I'm going to select feature branch, and I'm going to say this is US 10101 as before. Now I could create this off the current branch or the latest develop branch. And you can see what the current branch is over here. So I'm going to say latest develop, start my feature branch. Next thing I'm going to do is to edit my README file. I'm going to click on it and then click edit this file. Even though you can edit files within GitKraken, you can use your own editor externally. I'm just going to use the internal editor. I'm going to say my edit and save that. Then close the editor, or I could stage file. Let me close it, and you can come over here and I can stage the files that I want to stage, or I can stage all files. I'm going to say stage all files. In the command prompt, I just wanted to show you how that looks with git status. You can see that it is staged. And then I could unstage. And then in the command prompt, it's unstaged. Once again, just to show you which branch we're in, we are in the feature branch. So things that you do in GitKraken happen in your command line as well. They are in sync. Okay, stage all changes. So to commit, I'm going to come down here and put in my description. I edited my README file. I'm going to commit my change. So in order to get this up to my remote repo, I have to do a push, and it fills in the default values for me, and I could just click submit. And then you can see this little spinner, and then it indicates down here success. If we come up to GitHub and I refresh, I don't see my change, and that's because I realize I'm accidentally in the master branch. So I'm going to change to the feature branch, and then you can see my edit. So to create a pull request, you could go to pull requests and do a pull request from any branch to any branch. But it's indicating that I've got something for a pull request, so I'm going to click compare and pull request and make sure that I specify the develop branch, which is not showing up because it's only on my local. So I'm going to check out the develop branch and push it up. Come back to GitHub and refresh, and you'll see it's now in the drop-down menu. So now I'm going to do a pull request into my develop branch. Leave a comment, create a pull request. So here's where I'll get my code reviews, and then I'll merge pull request. Now if we come back to GitKraken, we can see that we don't have this edit in the file because we haven't pulled yet. So I'll do a pull. And then if we look at the README, we can see my edit. So now that I'm done with this feature branch, I can right-click on it, get a context menu, and select Delete Feature Branch. And say Delete. As a good habit, delete your branches once you're done working in them. Next, I want to create a pull request. So I'll come over here and hover over pull request, select the plus sign, and then indicate the from repo and the to repo, and indicate the from branch, which is the develop, and the to branch, which is the master. Then I'll indicate my title and my description, specify any reviewers or assignees labels, then click create pull request and click view on GitHub, and you can see this is the pull request, and then I could get my code reviews and confirm and merge. Return to GitKraken, and then check out my master branch and pull, and we can see my edit is now on the master branch. Now let's say I want to do a hotfix off of the master branch. So I go to Git Flow and select hotfix, and this is hotfix 1.0.1, start hotfix. And then I'll make my edits. This is my hotfix. Stage all changes. Put in my description. Hotfix, commit the change. And then push this up. Very fast. You see with the GUI, it's just click, click, click instead of typing commands. So it's pretty fast. So now I can create a pull request on GitHub. You could do that in GitKraken or GitHub. I'm just going to do it on GitHub here. Create the pull request really quick. Get my code reviews, and then it checks for any conflicts, and then if you have any conflicts, you have to fix the conflicts before you can merge, and then I merge. Then return to GitKraken and make sure we check out the master, and then pull down my changes, And let's take a look, and there's my hotfix. So the last thing I want to cover is branch naming conventions. And I mentioned this before, but if you have a team, it's very important that you establish a branch naming convention ahead of time so that when you look at the names of branches, you know automatically what it is, whether it's a test, a hotfix, a feature, or whatever. So this article, I'll provide the link in the description. It indicates use hyphens as separators rather than slashes. Some people like to use slashes, but that's can be confusing with path names. So this indicates use dashes. So here's some things to consider. If it's a bug, maybe call it bug dash. If it's a feature, feature dash. Hotfix, hotfix dash. If you're just playing around, call it junk dash so people know it's just junk, you're just playing with it. If it's maybe something specifically for the testers, call it test dash. Maybe some future version, a whip dash, work in progress. So just some ideas, throwing it out there, version dash, new dash. All right, that's it. I will see you later.